the new seed round that is live right now for Control Chain. As you can see, we've raised $134,000, and this is the seed round of the blockchain. And so we are raising 500K for the seed round. You're going to get a 10x multiplier on the supply that you get, the coins, the tokens that you get from this blockchain. The blockchain is, what makes this blockchain unique is something that hasn't been done in DeFi before, that is the solution to really everything that's wrong with DeFi. So it's something that just hasn't been done before. And what that ultimately is value distribution and value incentives. And so typically with every other blockchain, with every other token, all the value goes into the liquidity pool, and that liquidity pool incentivizes speculative behavior like pumping and dumping. It gives all the value to the early buyers, and then it kind of makes it not nearly as good for the people who continue to get in later. So this structure creates an environment within DeFi where people are more likely to approach a project not based off of trying to help a community and not based off of trying to really help a vision of the project come true, but it's more so based off of trying to be early and then take profits. And everybody's just trying to be early and take profits. And that creates a lot of pump and dump type behavior, a lot of bad projects, and it creates a situation where most people are, being negatively impacted. So within DeFi, probably 90% of the community within DeFi are losing, and that's so that 5 to 10% of the, community within DeFi can win. And so it's a system that's doing a lot of damage to people. It's hurting a lot more people than it's helping, and it's causing people to be turned off of DeFi. And so Control Chain, what we're doing with Control Chain is we are coming in and saying there is a solution to all of this. There is a solution to these problems that you see in DeFi. Most people, you've been burned, you've been rugged, you've been pump and dumped, and you've never seen a good solution for that. And I would argue the solution is just don't give that value to the early buyers. Don't give all the value to the early buyers. And that's what Control Chain is going to do. And so basically you can have liquidity that builds up towards different things. Instead of, if you think of a liquidity pool as a value system, then it's needed. But if it's the only value system, then all the value goes towards a system that incentivizes early buying. It's just a pyramid, and it's kind of the incentives of that system are not good for the community or the project. It incentivizes and rewards dumping, and it punishes holding. It incentivizes and rewards being early, and it punishes being late. That's not a good system because it doesn't align the value distribution with the vision of the project or the community. It's actually against the project and against the community. And so if you can build up value in other ways, then you can be able to align your community with value that aligns them with each other and with the project. And so that's exactly what Control Chain is going to be able to provide, and this hasn't been done before. With Control Chain, basically with typical projects, all the value goes towards liquidity. But if you can have significant amount of value go towards delayed liquidity or rewards, instead of it just being 1%, 2%, 5%, you could have 30%, 40%, 50%, or even more. And it's not that that's a value that isn't going towards the community, it's that it's going towards the community in a different way, with different incentives that unite the community. And so it's not about getting rid of a liquidity pool, because the liquidity pool is an important part of the process, because that's giving you your share of the value of the project. It's just if all the value goes towards that, then it's a problem. And so you still want to give a share of value of the supply towards your buyers. It's just that you want that value to not be detached from the community or be rewarded for hurting the community. And if it all goes towards a liquidity pool, that's exactly what that value is going to do. So
10x multiplier.
And I have visuals in here that can explain this. Let's see, I've got some. Another thing that this chain will have would be the fastest rising floor. But the current situation that Control Chain is really focused on fixing is making DeFi not a crappy place where people are lying to each other, scamming each other, dumping on each other, rugging each other. And the reason that it's that way is because all the value, the only way to get that value is to be early and dump, right? And if that's how you get the value, that's what everybody's going to do. But in order to do that, you need a bunch of people to buy in after you. So the goal now becomes to convince a bunch of people that they're going to make a bunch of money, while actually it's just so that the few people that are before them can dump on them. And however big you can make that is kind of the game that most projects are playing. And so the solution is value distribution. It's how is that value being given out? Is it being given out to people that are helping the project grow, or is it being given out to those that are hurting the growth of the project? And we can actually pull up some stuff so I can show you. The important part to remember about Control Chain is that the solution that we're coming after is one that has not been dealt with. And it's the biggest problem that all of DeFi is facing. Every project, it doesn't realize it, but there's a massive problem that's built into every project. And it's that the value and the incentives are all going towards a system that is against the project. It's against the incentives and the rewards. You're not rewarded for helping a project grow. You're not rewarding for helping a community. You're rewarded for hurting the project's growth, and you're rewarded for hurting a community. So the value is going towards a system that damages a lot of people, and it rewards you for damaging them, right? That's kind of like saying, hey, I'll give you a bunch of money if you go hurt a lot of people. That's how liquidity pools work. The purpose of that liquidity pool was to give you a representation, a share of the project, right? And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. It's just that how you get value from that share needs to be aligned with the project, at least balanced. It needs to be balanced, and that's really what Control Chain is about balancing this problem that every project has, which is if all your value goes towards the liquidity pool or a system of value distribution that incentivizes and rewards hurting cryptos, then you're going to get what you see in DeFi today. You're going to get pump and dumps. You're going to get projects that are not able to even try to accomplish what it is they're trying to do because everybody's just trying to be early and dump on each other. And so, yeah, if anybody has any questions, you can put them in the chat and I will read those. What's up, James, on Twitter? I'm trying to find something right now. Why can I not find this? Okay, here it is. And so I think here's a pretty good example of what typical DeFi is that this chain is solving is if all your value is in, say, this left pool and there's no value in the future, then people are going to be, the only way that people really buy or hold is that they believe that this is going to go up in the future. But instead of just having a promise that this value is going to go up in the future, you can just build real value in the future opposed to this. And now the future incentive or the future belief that people have in the project isn't based off of potential, but it's based off of a reality. So it would be the difference between knowing that you have $100 now and you've got $30 in rewards. Well, you could sell now and get $100, but your $100 could go up, but your rewards can also go up with it. So it's a very powerful tool. And so what Control Chain does is it says, instead of having holders put all their value into one system that divides them and hurts the project, what if you were able to build up significant value towards another system at the same time? So you still have value going towards liquidity, but you have value going towards the future. Then you're able to have the sentiment in the present and the sentiment in the future. And the sentiment in the future, the confidence in the future, will allow for a community to be less likely to dump on each other because there's more value in the future than there is in the present, which means that they'll be rewarded more for helping the project grow than they will be for taking profits. This is really all Control Chain is doing, is it's building up value in the future. Yep, if you go to seed.controltoken.net, you'll be able to purchase into the seed round of the pre-sale before we go live. With the pre-sale, we're going to be doing some mass marketing and stuff. So, appreciate you asking that question, James. Make this bigger so people can see. Yeah, this is really the important aspect of so you've got your liquidity pool, and then what I call it is delayed liquidity. And so it's still liquidity, but it's just not immediately available. And what that means is that the community can decide that they want to build up value in the future rather than just building up value that in the present, because the value in the present can be immediately destroyed by the early buyers, and those early buyers are being incentivized and rewarded for destroying it. Whereas if you build up value in the future that's significant, then you'll be able to affect the sentiment. So yeah, if you know that you have a bag, right, and your bag is worth $1,000, and let's just say that in the future you know that there's delayed liquidity, like a buyback wallet that has twice as much liquidity as what's in the liquidity pool. So a buyback wallet that's twice as big would mean that you know that there is more value in the future than there is currently in your bag. And so by always constantly building more value in the future than you have in the liquidity pool, you're able to allow for a community to feel confident about the growth of the project and to allow for it to grow. One of the main problems that Control Chain solves is typically you cannot do this. You can't just build value in the future because the holders would be paying a tax and they wouldn't be getting their tokens. At Control Chain, one of the tokenomics that we've created is that we just basically cover the tokens so that you're still getting your full share of value of the project, but instead of having all the value go towards a liquidity pool, the value is able to go towards other systems that incentivize the growth of the project, which is super important to what it is that we're talking about. When you understand the overall picture of why people are coming together in the first place, it's to help support something, to help it grow, to do well, and then to benefit from its success. But it should not just be to help a pyramid grow so that there's people that sell can take profits. People can do that if they want. I just think that's a bad system that's hurting more people than it's helping. And what we're providing really is just balancing these problems. So typically, with most projects, all your value is in your liquidity pool. And then the value in the future is just potential. And if you do have utility or revenue from rewards, it's usually like nothing compared to the value that you have in the current liquidity. And so really, that's what I see. This is an extremely unbalanced problem. And the people that are buying early, they're getting all of the ability to take this liquidity. That's why you got your top holders who have so much of the supply they can sell. They can really drain this liquidity. And the people that get in get less and less and less control over the liquidity. So it's bad incentives, it's bad distribution, it's unfair. And it's not that you need to get rid of it. That's not the solution. It's you need to balance it. And so you need more value to go towards the future. And it needs to be quite significant to be able to counter the value that is currently in the liquidity pool. And in doing so, you're able to change the sentiment from the holders and from the community to focusing on short-term games to focusing on the growth of the project and the long-term goals of the project. So every crypto, every project, every chain is facing this massive problem where you have a pyramid with bad incentives that's hurting more people, and everybody keeps trying to fix this problem. And the way that they try to fix it is they try to say, yes, we have liquidity here, but we just have to convince people that of the potential value of the future. And if we convince enough people that the project's going to be really successful, then they'll add their money in. They'll add all the liquidity in. But the project doesn't have to be successful for people to add value. And then the early buyers will drain that liquidity. And now the people that believed in the future of it are now betrayed. And that's kind of the model that I see with DeFi is you convince people that it's the next big thing. If you get them to believe that, you've created a giant pyramid and the early buyers get to take profits. And everybody's just trying to build up something that convinces a lot of people to believe in it, to throw their money into it, which will enable only the certain people who sell to take profits. And I think that there's so much wrong with that, and I think that people just don't realize that there is a solution for that, and that's what Control Chain is building. And what you really want is people still need the ability to get value and get a share of that value, but they need the incentives to be aligned. You need your whales to care about the project, right? And typically there's no incentive to care about the project. The only incentives they have are to sell. And so let's go ahead and set this up right here. And really all we're showing is the psychology of what you would do. And let's say you have your bag, and let's say your bag right now you can sell it for $100. But what if you knew that there was $200 worth of liquidity? Your bag was actually worth $200, but the value in the present is $100, and the value in the future is $200 worth. Well, you're going to feel a lot more confident holding, knowing that there's future value attached to your bag that cannot go down until it's distributed. That's the important aspect of it. And so with tokenomics, or tokenomics is how tokens are dished out. And so with tokenomics, instead of having all the value go towards a liquidity pool, by building up more value in the future and by giving this value out in a different way, instead of giving it to the people that sell, you can give it to people that hold. You can do rewards, you can do lotto style, where just large amounts go to random people. That way you can create significant, the entire point is that you just need significant value in the future. And let me try to write that so that you can get a better visualization of this. This is your future value. And this is the liquidity pool. Now, typically, how a liquidity pool works is you have to convince people, oh, the future is going to be so great, right? And people continue to add liquidity. But that structure is not a good one. And so what Control Chain is going to do is it's going to give projects the ability to not put all the value towards a system that's designed to fail, but to build up value in the form of rewards, in the form of a buyback wallet, in the form of any way that you can think of to say, hey, community, if you work together to grow this project, It's not that you might get rewarded if you sell. It's that there's big significant value that's built up for you in the future that's attached to the milestones or the success of the project, and projects will be able to choose what they want that to be. They'll say they could pick a time frame. We're going to build up more value in the future than we do in the LP for a year. We're going to build up more value in the future than we do in the LP until we hit 1,000x. We're going to develop more value in the future than the LP until we release this chain, until we get our utilities out. Because by then we've accomplished what we're trying to do, and now we can put it out. One of the important factors, I think, when it comes to what it is that we're talking about is that you can do a pre-sale and you can do a raise where people can come together, but that raise isn't showing a visual demonstration, a representation of the chart. And so by having a chart, that's the sentiment, and that's kind of sending a message to the world of this is how people feel about this project. The more the chart goes up, the more that the world will say, wow, they've got something great going on there. And obviously as it goes down, people start to say, hey, I don't want to touch that. So when you incentivize the sentiment to go down, right, by giving out that value, you are incentivizing bad sentiment. You're saying whoever sells will be rewarded. Whoever makes our chart look bad is going to win, and you're going to get all the value. So the incentives are not aligned, right? We need the community to be aligned with the growth of the project and not with the death of it. It's a pretty simple idea, but the only way to do that is to have value in the future that's significant compared to the liquidity pool. The only way to do that is to either have a massively, massively successful utility that's generating so much value that you're able to counter the liquidity pool, although I don't think that's actually possible, because it's so much easier to generate value from people buying into an idea, which is how a liquidity pool works. They just believe something and then they buy into it. It doesn't have to generate revenue. People just have to throw their money in, than it is to create a utility that's going to be able to compete with the liquidity pool. Because even if you have a successful utility, the liquidity pool or the sentiment can always outweigh easily the utility revenue. And so by making sure that value distribution in the sense of how it's collected and how it's given out aligns with what's best for the project and for the holders is obviously a far better system. And that's what we have at Control Chain. That's what we're going to be releasing. And so our chain, you'll be able to come on and build a project, and you'll be able to build up more value in the future than what you have in your liquidity for a period of time. And that's really important. So if people get in, they say, oh, here's the price. That's awesome. Well, it's a cheaper price. But if you build up value in the future, then people are going to continue to be able to be confident about the growth of the project, and you'll be able to sustain that and say, okay, cool, as we go up here, now at a certain point, this value in the future has to go back to the holders in some way. And so, yeah, you would at a certain point say, okay, now if it's rewards, now we're going to start giving out rewards, and this liquidity would start being drained. And so people would start getting their rewards. And by rewards, I mean stablecoin, so that it's not something that can go down in value. Or you could add liquidity. So you could say, now we're going to put the liquidity back in as a liquidity injection or as a buy on the chart, because we've reached the milestones that we are aiming to reach as a project. And so now, because you guys are still here, now here's your liquidity, right? And what this is it's a balance. One project, they could do, they could technically do 50% towards the LP and 50% towards the future. Now, all the value is going to the holders. It's just that the holders have agreed with this specific project that they want half the value to be delayed to protect the early buyers from draining all the value until the project has achieved what it's aiming to do. And there's also a way to protect the project in how you give this value out. If you add it as buys, then people will just be able to sell it down. If you do it as rewards, then it goes out, but it's more diluted because it's going to more people. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but ultimately you want to give it out in a way that is rewarding those who help the project, and that's going to be staking, that's going to be holding, that's going to be the things that help the project. So I believe you should take this value and you should give it to, because this value is going towards the people that sell, the people that hurt the project, the people that hurt its growth. This value in the future, if you take this and you give this to the people that are holding, staking, then it'll actually, you'll be rewarding the people who actually help the project grow, and you'll be incentivizing your entire community to help the project grow in doing so. And that's where staking, if you have a significant amount of value going towards stakers, significant amount of value going towards the stakers in the form of rewards, in a form of a lotto, so that there's a chance of a really big, you get your rewards, you get a really big buy, and you have delayed liquidity that's going to be added over a period of time. Well, now you can actually align your community, your whales, to care about the future, because there's real value in the future, right? That's really the idea of what we're saying. And so another project might come in and say, that's really excessive, 50-50. I don't want to do that. I just want to do like 70-30. I want to do like, 70% towards the liquidity pool, but I want to do 30% towards delayed rewards. Well, even this is balancing the problem between the liquidity pool, the current value, the pyramid system, the bad incentives, and the future. At least there's significant value. Now, the liquidity pool is still going to be stronger, but if you have a sell tax, then as people drain this value, or even if you don't have a sell tax, if people drain this value won't go down, and now your project's not dead. That's really important. People realize that say people sold down your entire liquidity pool. If you built up 30% of all your buys, then you might have just barely any liquidity, but now you've preserved the project's future by having value attached to its future. And so that's a very important mechanism to have for a project, to protect its future, because if you're protecting the future, you're protecting the holders, and if you're protecting the holders, you're protecting the individual. And so by focusing on the individual, you're able to focus on the project as a whole. But if you're focused on short-term selling rather than long-term holding, you're going to reward the few that hurt the project rather than the whole that help it. And that's just a really bad structure, and that's how crypto works. Crypto is a really bad structure. The reason that we can do this at Control Token is because we take a large amount of the supply and we set it aside. And you can do 50%, you could do 10%. It doesn't really matter, because the supply is not going to be used for anything other than going back to the holders to cover their tokens whenever they purchase. And it's still value that's attached to the token. It's just not attached to the price of the token, which is kind of a really interesting aspect about this, is that it would be super important that as visually as you can see the price, you would also visually need to be able to see the other value that you're building up that's attached to it. So how we do this is, say this amount of the supply right here is given to that's what's available, and then this amount of the supply is what's used to cover the taxes that people are paying. And it's not necessarily a tax, it's just value that's not going towards liquidity. It's value that's going towards the community. It's not going anywhere else, but instead of it going towards the community in a really bad system, it's going towards the community in a much better system. This system incentivizes holding. I mean, you could have a project which would be quite interesting where there's no value in the liquidity pool, but that really wouldn't work, because people would just be getting insane amount of tokens and the price would barely be changing. That's one good thing about this, is that as the price goes up, or as the liquidity goes, the price goes up, so people get less supply. Whereas if the supply is really low and all the value is going towards the future, then people would be able to buy up significant amounts of the supply at a very cheap price, because the price would be moving much slower, which would make it easier to get more of the supply. But when a project's basically, what we're doing with this chain is we're giving every project in DeFi a place where they can come to balance a problem that they cannot find solutions to anywhere else. And in doing so, they, like I said, they can choose the ratio. We have to put stuff in place to protect people, and holders still have to, no chain is responsible for every project that comes on. But at the same time, we want to do the best we can to protect holders and to incentivize people to make good projects, not bad ones. So even if a project wanted to say do 90% and just 10% rewards, they could do that. And they could cover that supply so that the holder isn't down. The holder still gets their full bag value, but they're building up future value that protects the project, and it goes towards the people that do protect the project. I personally think the more you balance this, the better, so that the more value that you have in the future, the better. If your bag hypothetically was worth $100, but you had $300 in rewards, nobody would sell. They'd say, why would I sell? There's more in rewards than there is for my bag right now. And you might be able to do some crazy stuff with systems like this. Just kind of funny, because you'd be incentivizing people to chase value in the future that's real instead of potential value in the future. People typically only chase potential value of a liquidity pool, or potential value of utilities, or potential value of revenue. Whereas the future value that we can build can be real value. And if you're building up, if a liquidity pool by design is designed to build up more value in the future than it builds up in the liquidity pool, then by design you can have a project that will always incentivize and reward its future more than it incentivizes and rewards the present for a period of time. And I don't think that this is sustainable. I think that this is designed for growth. And the reason that you should have growth is because it's what benefits the project. And so at a certain point of growth, say a project puts out all its utilities and it says, okay, now we want to shift the tax or the tokenomics from having it all more go towards the future to it being more towards the liquidity pool. And so that there was more liquidity and more trading. And then we add the liquidity from the future to the liquidity pool. And now we have our rewards in the future. We still have a buyback wallet, and maybe we have Lotto that we've built up. But now there's more value, and now it's more open to trading. And so we've built up this position for the community where they have to decide between value. And it's not just the value of immediately selling. We can build up significant value of rewards and lottos, and then we have value in the liquidity pool. But if all the value is always overpoweringly in the liquidity pool, then you're always going to be incentivizing your own community to dump on each other, and you're going to reward them with everything for hurting each other and hurting the growth of the project. This is something that has not been done in DeFi before. And this is something that would help. Now with Control Token, we've already achieved this, because right now we have more value in our future than we do in our liquidity pool. Because our buys and our sells fuel the future, well, when people sell down the liquidity pool, the future value will not go down until it's distributed. That protects the project. So this is a very useful technique and a tool for projects to preserve the project, to preserve value that goes to the people who usually get nothing. If you don't build up any future value, then you're building up value that's going to be taken from your early buyers, and after it is, now you don't have any value in your liquidity, and you don't have any value in the future. You're trying to grow the value in your liquidity by offering value in the future, and it's very hard to do. You have to convince people of something that may or may not even be true. You know what I mean? So that's why it becomes this, next 1000x, not financial advice, don't fade this, all that stuff is trying to convince people that, oh, this one's going to be really big, and that's why you need to buy it. It's a really good buying opportunity. So what Control Token, Control Chain, and the Control Utilities do is we say, build up future value. And it needs to come from a tokenomics. It needs to come from the value that goes to the LP, because you need to balance your LP. Your LP is where the problem's at. Even this is a far more balanced ratio of short-term selling versus long-term holding. Which one benefits the project, short-term selling or long-term holding, right? Okay, so if all your value is in short-term selling, what do you think's going to happen? You're going to get DeFi. You're going to get everything that we see in DeFi. But what if you have, a ratio, whether it be small or big, even if you have a lot in here, if you even build up some value in the future that's preserved, that can't go down. The problem is that when people build up value in the future, if it's attached to the token, if that value is being given out in tokens, then there's not actually any value in the future. People are just building up, you're just offering more of the supply to the people in the future. But all people have to do is sell before you get your tokens. And now there's no value in the future and there's no value in the liquidity pool. So this is really just probably the clearest explanation of what Control Chain is going to do with its coin, and the clearest explanation of what every project is. We're going to be able to empower projects to say, build up value in your future that goes towards the people who deserve it. I don't think that just because you were early that you deserve to get all the value and destroy the project. I think that's a bad setup. I think you should be early. There should be value that goes towards you if you want to leave. But I believe we should build value in the future that can't go down even when people sell. And that's super important to remember, is that your liquidity pool can always be drained by the people that sell. But if you build up value in the future that can't be drained by selling, and it's preserved in a stable coin, then that's the life of the project. The liquidity is the life. And that's why when you add liquidity to the liquidity pool, this is the sentiment. People are like, wow, this is awesome. Look at all this liquidity that we got. Look at the price. But when you build up value in the future, you're building the same thing. You're just preserving it, and it's delaying it. And so, like I said, if people sell and a project builds up significant value in the future, then it allows for the rest of the community to remain confident in the project's growth. But if a project can build significant value into the future compared to in the liquidity pool, then you've basically given all your holders reason to be confident for a period of time. And in doing so, hey, what's up, Jake Adams? Yes, you can ask a question. What's going on? Hey, what's up, Truth Hurts? How's it going? Tommy OC, so much thought is put into the project. Its success is destined. Yeah, you can ask any questions. So, what is your question, brother? Why do you pull from the liquidity pool and 2 minutes later buy the chart? And 2 miss later buy the chart? 2 miss later? Oh, if you're asking about control token? Yeah, so with control token, we had 2 liquidity pools. We had one XUSD and one BNB. And so we had a liquidity pool that we no longer needed, so we needed to add that liquidity back to the BNB pool. And so when we pulled liquidity, that was because we are on base. And so we needed liquidity for base. And we had to basically add that liquidity back to the chart in order to, because the liquidity that went to the XUSD pool came from selling down the BNB chart. And so to balance that out, when you add that liquidity back, adding it by buys is balancing the sells that came to get that liquidity. If you actually care, which you probably don't, but if you actually care about that. Well, a lot of people are, they don't understand liquidity. A lot of people, they don't actually care about what's true. The point is that you can add liquidity as buys, and you can add liquidity as liquidity injections. And the decision is what's best for the project. And the important part of what makes it not market manipulation is that you communicate it, that you're adding liquidity. So if somebody takes a liquidity pool and adds it as liquidity buys, that's okay, because that liquidity came from liquidity sells. I know it takes an ounce of common sense to figure something like that out. So with the blockchain, just want to understand why. Yeah, so I mean, I've told you why. The only liquidity that we've pulled is to add to our base liquidity. There's your answer. The liquidity that we've added in the form of buys came from a secondary liquidity pool that was built by selling down the BNB chart. So if I were to sell down the BNB chart to build a liquidity pool of XUSD, and then I just liquidity injection, add that back, that's not balancing what it did, right? Because how it came from selling down the chart by adding it back as buys, I'm just balancing what it did. And you're able to add liquidity as buys. But this isn't what we're talking about, Jake Adams. So if you want to message me about that, you're welcome to. We are talking about the blockchain, and we're talking about, and it's okay if you're not this person, but there is just such stupid people out there. They're so beyond stupid that it's quite astounding. It's a new level of stupidity that it's hard to believe someone could be that stupid. Anyways, what this control chain is about is saying if you put all your liquidity in a liquidity pool, you're gonna have a pyramid, right? You got your pyramid, and that pyramid is the early buyers. Whoever's at the top, they bought early, and the people that are coming in later are buying less, and they're getting less and less of the supply. This is the problem, and people are trying to say, oh, this guy's a scammer, and oh, what happened to liquidity over here, and this project's bad, and it's just, people just aren't able to think. They've lost their ability to reason and self-reflect. And the only problem that this really comes down to is people just don't want to know what's true. They're just like seeking something to fuel their own egos. And so it's like, okay, just let people be delusional. But for anybody that's not delusional and not stupid and has their eyes open, you can see that the problem that DeFi is facing is even if you remove deceit and bad actors, if you have honest people going and starting projects, it's still going to be a pyramid. And why is it a pyramid even if you have honest people running a project? Because that's how the value distribution works. The early buyers get larger and larger percents of the supply, and the later buyers get less and less and less. That's the pyramid. It's not because someone's trying to scam you. It's because that's how it's built to give out value. I wish people are asleep, and it's like, wake up, you idiots. Some people are idiots, dude. Okay, Jake Adams, I appreciate that. I've been dealing with, I have to deal with this group of people, and man, they are stupid, bro. They are stupid. And here's my frustration with these people is, here's the problem, right? And if you don't agree with me, then you either don't know what you're talking about, not you, Jake Adams, but anybody, or you're a scammer, or you're just really good at this terrible system. If buying early and getting all the value is the best way to go about it, then it's not whether or not it's a good person running the project or not. It's a bad system. So good people and bad people are building on top of a bad system that gives all the value to the early buyers. No, everybody else gets screwed. They're at the bottom of the pyramid. And so what I'm posing, what I'm doing, and what I have done and continue to do is to say build up value in the future that protects your project. This is why if you go to Control Token, you'll see that we have $250,000 in stablecoin rewards, and we have like 100,000 or 100 to 200,000 in our liquidity. And it's like, okay, we have far more value in the future than we do now. Because we've done that, we have protected the project. We have value that can't be destroyed. If you see the value as the life of the project, then that value it's important to have value that can't be drained by your pyramid, people at the top of your pyramid. So I don't know. Appreciate that, Jake Adams. Yeah, I'm used to having to deal with just a lot of stupidity, to be honest with you. figured you would be very interested to hear this take on liquidity pools. Yeah, this is my take on liquidity pools. And the thing is I know it's true. This isn't like maybe if we do this, maybe something will happen. It's just a reality. You need value in your future, and that's delayed. You've got immediate value, which is your speculative pump and dump, divides the community, pyramid. It's everything negative that you don't like about crypto comes from all the value being in a liquidity pool. People just don't realize that. I don't know what's going on in DeFi. I realize it and I know it. And you can't balance it with the promises, right? You can't balance it with those things. You might be able to grow it with promises, but you can't actually balance this problem. And so even if you do end up, you can say, oh, we're going to be doing these amazing things. People throw in liquidity. Oh, we've got this amazing utility coming out, and a celebrity is going to tweet about us. And people are like, oh, man, this is crazy. We got to get in. We got to get in. It's so big. There's no value built up into the future. And your people at the top of your pyramid, your early buyers, are going to drain this liquidity because they have no reason not to. They have to hurt the rest of the holders and the sentiment of the project in order to get this liquidity. They have to sell this chart. They have to sell down the chart, and they have to hurt everybody and the growth of the project in order to get this value. But if you build up value in the future that doesn't go towards selling, right? That's really the important part. This is from selling. The only way to get value out of the LP is to sell. The way to get value out of the future is to hold. It's to stake. It's to be part of the project. And now you actually have value. If you don't build up real value in the future, you have to convince people of the future to build up the liquidity pool so that a few people can sell down, hurt your chart, and get all the value while hurting the project. Because the only way to get this value is to sell out of the liquidity pool. Right? Build up value in the future that can't go down from selling and give it to the people who help the project. The more value you have in the future, the more that you balance the problem of a project. If you have equal value in the liquidity pool as you do in the future, now people don't just have the speculative option that both the liquidity pool and the future value could go up, but they have the safety and security of the future value, because even if people sell down the liquidity pool, the value you build up in future can't go down from sells, right? That's the way you want to give it out, is not from selling. And so that protects the holders. Now, how do they get that value? There's a lot of different ways you can go about giving it to them. But the point is that you can't just hope that you can make all these promises of future value while all the liquidity is going towards a liquidity pool that incentivizes pumping and dumping, that divides your community, that hurts the project, that hurts the growth. And that's a really bad system. The scamminess of DeFi that everybody doesn't like, that they just throw at everybody who makes a project like an idiot that can't think, does not come from bad behavior always. It comes from a bad structure. So that even when people who are honest, who are trying to make decent projects, find themselves stuck with the problem that they cannot balance, which is that the early buyers get all of the control over the liquidity to drain it and leave the project with a down chart and an upset community with a hope of a future producing value in the future. And I'm saying, don't do that. You need the value, the incentives for your community to not all be in one system that's a pyramid. You need to build up significant value in the future that goes towards those for holding and goes towards those who are growing the project. And it can be given out in a more fair way too. It can be given out with what we've come up with on our chain as far as tiered tokenomics as well. Hey, Ivan, how's it going? What did I miss? Like staking exchanges by providing them LP, but what this time your staking is rewarded better? No, it's not that. It's super important that the value that everybody's bringing to the project doesn't only go towards a pyramid, that it only rewards selling. It's super important that the value that people bring to the project, which is where all the value comes from, goes towards helping the project. It's funny that I even have to say that, right? So the value that people care about when it comes to any project is the price. And the value that comes from the price is the buyers. So the holders who are buying up the supply up here, increasing the price, and starting from the early buyers to the later buyers is in usually typically all in a liquidity pool. There's no value in the future. There's none. There might be, oh, here is some rewards and here's some utility that we built. Now, what do you think your holders are going to do? What do you think your whales are going to do when they look at the value in the future and they look at the value in the present and they go, I think I'm just going to take my profits and go to another project, right? But there is some really interesting things that do happen when you start to balance this significantly, not just a little bit, but you start to balance it by quite a lot. Now people can say, because there's so much value in the future, it allows for me to actually not have to worry about exiting the project before everybody else, because even if they do sell, I've still got this value in the future. And what that allows for me to do is to actually care about what the project is doing. And what that allows for a project to do is to set a higher standard that the project must be doing something worth doing, because the community is now able to actually focus on what you're doing rather than on the short-term gains that they can get from a liquidity pool. And so this starts to balance sentiment versus the vision of the project. And the vision of any project is based on future success. And so liquidity pools detach the holders from being invested in the future success, because the value that they're getting doesn't come from the future success of the project. It comes from people buying and believing in the future success of the project. And so by getting that value, by selling it down, it puts you in a situation where the holders sell down the chart and they're rewarded for hurting the sentiment of the project. I'm sure your 14 listeners are going to send this to the moon. Hey, what's up, Shannon? Are you an upset SafeMoon holder? Dude, this space is so broken, so hurt, so egotistical, so lost, so delusional. There's so many people that are lying, scamming, attacking. Everyone's been abused. Everyone's just pointing the finger. Everyone's attacking. And so all I'm saying is we need a better system, right? It shouldn't just be your early buyers. It's what about the guys down here? What about you when you buy at the bottom, right? What about you? And I'm saying, should we not all care about not just the people that are early, but the people that are late and the people in the middle? And how do we care about them? Well, we need to build up value that goes to them, because that's why they're here. We can't just care about them in some way that doesn't actually bring value to them, right? So you have value that goes towards your liquidity pool, that goes towards the pyramid. The early buyers will be taken care of because they're at the top. They have the most access to your liquidity. By building value in the future, you can give this value out in the best way possible to counter this pyramid problem. And so how we have that is with tiered tokenomics. And so what we do is we take these layers of people that are coming in later and we give them value that does not go to the top. That's what our tiered tokenomics do. And that's value that only applies to new buyers. So you create new systems. As the price grows here, we have a new system of value. All these previous buyers above this point do not gain access to this liquidity. Same thing here. All these previous buyers before this don't gain access to this, so that we can make it more and more fair for the people who usually get less and less value. Now, if you don't like that, if somebody doesn't like that, I'd say you're probably a scammer, or you're ignorant, or, it's one of those two. You're either a scammer or you're ignorant. You don't know what you're talking about, or you have bad intentions. To look at DeFi and say, wow, you guys actually have a way to shift value towards later buyers, which makes the pyramid not a pyramid, then you'd have to say, I like pyramid. I like big giant pyramid. And I'm like, okay, you like that. You've got the rest of DeFi, but if you're gonna try to point at a project and say it's a problem, you're picking the one project that's trying to balance the problem that makes crypto unfair. And how absolutely stupid would you have to be to do something like that? You'd have to be, like I said, that's like finding a needle in a haystack and calling it a piece of hay. That's how, when people come to this project and accuse it of being bad things, and I'm like, dude, I'm trying to help you, you moron. I'm not just trying to help myself or my community. I'm trying to help everybody and saying, these typical systems are really bad. And if your thing is, well, you're nobody cares about you, that's fine. Like, I don't care, and I don't think that way. I don't think any of us are nobodies. But the problem is that I'm just going to have to deal with that nonsense while I try to do this. And so, but the reality is that in building up value in the future, when people sell down your project, right? They sell it down. There's no value left. If you built up value in the future, you've now built up value that goes to people who typically get nothing. They don't get anything. And so you've made your project so much more fair. But you also, when you build up value in the future, you set a floor for your project of sentiment, right? Because if they know that let's say it's right here, their bag is worth $100 and their rewards or the future value is worth $100. If anybody were to sell below the $100 marker, they would be selling a bag at a loss because there's more value in the future than there is in the present, right? It's a pretty simple concept. "99% of crypto is one-dimensional. Control has built-in security from sell-offs." We do everything we can, but ultimately you can't stop somebody from making a project and rugging it. Like, that's why people are rugging every chain, BNB, Solana. There's no chain you can find where someone isn't rugging, right? People can create code on top of it. We can do everything we can. One of the things we are looking at doing is having basically like categories or badges that show they're using our tokenomics, or maybe they have anti-rug protection, or they've KYC'd, so that people can filter based on, oh, this guy's KYC'd, oh, this guy has their anti-rug protection, oh, this guy is using controls tokenomics or whatever. So that's how we can mitigate it the best we can, but ultimately anybody can come and build on the chain. That's kind of how blockchains work. Exactly, CC. I know you did math and Mark, and he did it for a couple of years to make some good expansion equation for DeFi. With SafeMoon, no one asked, just bought. If now provided with good stuff, now they ask and don't believe, but SafeMoon's still good. Oh, yeah. It's so funny, dude. That's why it's like, it's easier to convince people of a lie than it is to convince them of the truth. I don't know why that's a thing, but that's definitely a problem in DeFi. We will just have to see when all the control community members make it. There's nothing wrong with setting high goals. Keep it up, CC. It's a pretty big goal with the chain with what we're trying to accomplish. The thing is that I know the idea works, and it's now just, can we execute this in the right way to impact DeFi? And that's building the tools that allow for us to do this and for other projects to do this. And and then coming up with a strategy that will bring this message to the space. Like, we don't just need to chain where there's a few people doing well. We're kind of trying to send a message to everybody to say, stop building on liquidity pools. It's a pyramid. Stop it. Don't do it. Balance it, right? Put value, significant value, into the future. And, whether you want to do, 90, 10, 80, 20, 50, 50, 10, 90, whatever, people are agreeing to your project when they do it. And there's still going to be problems. It's not that there's a perfect solution. It's that you need to balance it. And that's why I say, if you can balance buyback liquidity, then now your holders know that there's going to be buyback liquidity and there's rewards. And they can have this crazy sentiment of bullishness towards the project. And it's probably shifting between the two. You have to shift between going towards liquidity pool and then going towards the future, and going towards liquidity pool and going towards the future. And if you incorporate AI tokenomics into this, then you might have something quite astounding, which is, the next thing that we're looking at is to have an AI tokenomics program where you can say we always want to have this much percentage going towards our buyback wallet as opposed to the liquidity pool. And so that when you buy, you pay a tax, but it's using AI to determine where does the value need to go. Does the value need to go towards liquidity? Does the value need to go towards the future value? And that might be some insane level of taking dynamic tokenomics to a level of protection that you haven't seen before, where the AI would basically be able to always incentivize growth or incentivize stability. But I think that what you'll find with this system, which is bad for scammers, because if you always have far more value in the future, then you're gonna have a lot of people buying. People will feel so much more bullish on the future that they'll continue to put value into the LP, and the future will continue to go up. I think that'll eventually create a problem, which is even if you did build up value for a long time, as soon as the future value gets released, then depending on what you do with that value, it could just dump, and then you'd lose. If the value just all goes back to the liquidity pool in the form of a liquidity injection or a buyback, then you're just building up in order to do another dump, right? That's why it's how you give this future value out that is really important. I just personally do believe that there's 3 ways that I can think that you should build up value in the future, and we're always exploring. We're exploring this not as a end-all be-all, but as something that we continue to learn and grow on, like uncharted territory where we're just continuing to explore. I would say you've got your buyback right here, you've got your rewards right here, and you've got a lotto style right here. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a lotto, but it's the ability to randomize significant value to holders to where as long as they're in the project or in the staking pools, they have access to the potential of significant value. That's what the lotto one is. The rewards is good, but it's also hard because rewards get split among people, and that greatly dilutes it, right? So it's just if you have value from the liquidity pool, that only goes to the people who sell. That's what makes it so powerful. But rewards, they go to everybody, so it gets greatly diluted. So you need significant value to go towards rewards for it to be meaningful in comparison to the value that's in selling down the liquidity pool. But if you build up value that's a buyback, let's just say that we have liquidity, we've got our rewards, we've got our big lotto style rewards that go to people just for being in the project, and then we do our buyback one. Well, when you do the buyback, you're gonna drain that buyback one. You'll still have your rewards, you'll still have your big lotto one, but then you'll take the buyback and you'll add it as liquidity injections, or you'll add it as buys on the charts to recover from the sells that happen. Technically, you can do both because it's value that would have gone towards buys on the charts. There's dumb people that don't like to see projects grow, so they just don't know what they're talking about. Once you add that value back, it's like, well, what's the best way to add it for a project on control chain? Well, you could do it all at once, right? But typically that's not a good thing. You could do it slowly over time, which would be better. And you could do that slowly over time while doing the rewards, so that if people are choosing to sell, then they're forfeiting this rewards to each other. They're also forfeiting their large scale value that goes back to holders during that time as well. And so this is kind of the incentive is not just to get growth for the sake of growth. The incentive is to get growth to align with the vision of the project. Maybe a project's vision is just to grow as much as possible. And I don't know. I guess that'd be careful territory, to push into that, because you might just be building a giant pyramid, and just because it's really big doesn't mean necessarily that you made a good system. I believe what makes a system a good system is that it rewards the people who deserve it, not rewarding the people who don't. I don't think that just because you're early that you deserve all the value. I think that if you help a project grow, that you deserve significant value. And so these are the solutions that Control Chain brings. The good things about goals are they can be adjusted to fit the community. This should shake up the system. Very impressive. Thanks, James. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, this... The crazy thing about this is I know this works, And I know that there's room for crazy projects, and my own community can be the ones to build these first projects. You want to build a project that does 40% towards rewards and 60% towards liquidity with a 15-20% selfie, you're going to build up significant amount of rewards. And if you can cover those taxes on the buys with the taxless tokenomics, the holder doesn't feel the weight at first. Well, no, they don't feel the hit from that value going towards the future. And so they shouldn't, right? Because they are still adding liquidity to the project. They should still get their full value of tokens, right? That's the thing I don't really like about tax tokens is they're still paying for things, but they're taking the hit. And taxless tokenomics says you're not going to take the hit because we've put aside a large amount of the supply to cover you from taking the hit. And we have a way to recover that, right? If we have a buyback wallet and the price goes down a lot, well, we buy back a large amount of the supply, and then we add that supply back to the supply that covers your taxless tokenomics. It's a very good system, actually. Many creators promise that but never deliver. CC is delivering a sustainable for this project and hopefully all of DeFi. I don't understand why anyone wouldn't want that. Yeah, I think that we are at we're at an interesting stage, and I need to do this right. But oh, thanks for that, guys. I think I need a new mic. This one, might need to buy a new one. Trust in you, Thomas, with all the way. This is a long-term gem, and people will learn and see soon enough. Most want just pump and dump to make gains really quick. CC, you're muted. No sound. Thank you. I appreciate that, guys. Sorry about that. So, having all of this right here makes it super easy to show what it is I'm talking about. The LP, the short term, the future value, which is usually nothing. You've got your pyramid, you've got your chart, and you've got the supply. Literally, I've got everything that you need to understand like crypto right here. and how it all affects each other. You've got your chart dumping, and so that's a very, I don't know if I can make this any more visually or simply understood, that all we're saying is if there's more value in the future, then you're going to chase that value. If there's more value in selling in the present, you're going to chase that value through selling. And so you want your community to be united with each other, to be about the success of the project, right? And if the only value is in selling, that's not success of the project. That's you selling down the project. And we're not saying that selling should be gotten rid of, but that it should be done at the right time. Now, if you give up on the project, that's one thing, right? You should be able to exit your position because you don't believe in it. But you shouldn't have to say, well, I actually like what this project is doing, but there's no value necessarily in what they're doing. All the value only comes from me selling down my bag. So I'm going to sell, even though I like this community and I like this project. There's no reason for me not to, because the only value that I see is in the liquidity pool. That's why I say that imagine a chain of projects that have even 20, 30, 40% of value going towards rewards that are being given to their community in the form of staking, lotto, and tiered liquidity. Tiered liquidity is one of my favorite things that we've come up with, because it's the ability to shift significant value to later buyers who usually get less and less of the supply. They have less and less access to the liquidity. But we basically say, actually, we're gonna create your own designated liquidity that the previous holders can't compete with. This liquidity right here, nobody before it is going to be able to get access to that liquidity. Could you do some calculations on what control token holders could get on 12-month rewards, like for 100K tokens or 1 million tokens for now? The calculator shows you rewards right now. The potential volume is completely speculative, Ivan. Best project in DeFi by a mile, puts the rest to shame. Jim the Quim. Interesting name there, brother. Here on Twitch. Yes, thank you, Tommy. I appreciate that. This project, it's funny. We have something so special. We really do. And now it's just going to come down to execution. But ultimately, as long as we get the chain built and projects have the ability to do what I'm showing, then projects will be more successful. If you can build up more value in the future, you're going to allow for your entire community, your whales, to be like, oh, I can hold because there's so much value in the future, right? And I'm still getting my share of the supply. And then you're going to see projects that are more successful. It's just a reality. If you balance a problem, then you're going to have a better solution. You have a better solution, you're going to see success. And so if we have a chain that balances the main problem, which we've identified, obviously, is all the value going towards the liquidity pool, then we're going to have a solution towards better projects that make people happier too. Now, people, unless they're just completely greedy, but if people go, hey, on control chain, yeah, when they sell down the project, it sucks, but most projects on control chain are building up significant value in the future that protects me as a holder. I feel so much more safe on control chain, and projects are more likely to grow because they're building up value that incentivizes growth. This value incentivizes the growth of this value. The long-term future value, and by the way, it's super important that people understand that. Because, and man, this is probably not going to look good, but how people typically grow a liquidity pool is completely based off of speculation, speculative. It's obviously when you buy something, it's because you think that it's, sorry, I'm using a mouse, so this isn't going to look great. It's completely speculative. And so people take a project and they say, we're the next big thing, we're doing such and such, and people just add value. This is awesome. People are gonna chase this idea. Okay, cool, we'll add more liquidity. We like this. There's no actual value in the future. It's completely speculative. But you can still see projects go to, billion plus market caps, insane growth, right? Without actually having any value in the future. And so what we're saying is, if you have speculative plus real value built up in the future, it completely changes the sentiment psychology of the project. And if you give this value in a way that unites the community to commit to its growth, like we have at Control Token with our staking, then you do have a far better system. It unites your community. It rewards them with significant value for doing what's good for the project without having to sell down on each other. This value that you build in the future does not contribute to sells unless you're adding it back to the liquidity pool. If you're giving it out in rewards, if you're giving it out in a lotto style, that you're not putting sell pressure on the charts. The good part is if you do add it as liquidity, is if you add it as buys, then it can be sold down, but it'll be sold down from, it'll be downward movement that came from upward movement, because as you add liquidity, the price moves up. As you take liquidity, the price moves down. So yeah, oh man, I forgot I could do that. I can just sit there and drain liquidity. Yeah, that you want a visual representation of what it looks like when a whale sells. This is the whale selling right now. That's pretty cool, huh? All right, guys, I got some other stuff I got to work on today, but we are going to be getting the pitch deck for Control Chain built, which will explain everything, and then we're going to really be filling the seed round, and then we're going to be pushing the pre-sale. So this really determines our ability to do marketing, to build a team, to build a chain. And so the better we do at the seed round and the pre-sale, the more likely we can bring this vision to fruition and to see its success, to be able to advertise to projects. But if worse, no matter what, this is designed. We have it set up to, even if we don't do an insane raise with the pre-sale or the seed round, we have the cost of the chain plus the liquidity. So if barely any people are buying, then it's less liquidity. If a ton of people are buying, it's more liquidity, obviously. But as long as the chain's built, then people will be able to build projects on our chain. And by the way, I'd be building projects on this chain because I'd finally not be limited by the problem. I'd be able to say, yeah, have 30-40% go towards your floor for a period of time, then have it go towards a buyback wallet. But no matter what, you're always able to create projects that are able to counter this problem and see levels of growth. And it's really more so about us exploring and finding what are the best systems. What systems unite and help people do good the best, so that the system is aligned with the idea, and so that a project can fail not because the system's bad, but because the idea is bad. That's what we really need to see, is projects fail because the idea is bad, not because the system supporting the idea is bad. That's really all we're and that sets a much higher standard if people can shift away from that to, well, the system, the only way I get value from the system is if I sell, to what is this idea actually about? Are they actually trying to do anything? Because if our chain, which it would, raises the standard and allows for communities to shift away from speculation to the purpose of the project, the idea, because the value distribution is more associated with whether or not that idea is good or not, by setting a higher standard, you cause people to pull away from terrible projects. You cause them to pull away from scams, because they're going to be like, well, we already know that this system is better designed, and now it actually just comes down to the idea. And now imagine you go to Control Chain. They have our tokenomics, they have our anti-rug protection, they've KYC'd. You'd say, this guy has put his reputation on the line, he's building up value in the future that's going towards the community, and he has this anti-rug thing, which I think that the only way to really build an anti-rug component into something is to give the chain control over the project, to protect the holders. If something happens that's a red signal, then they can do the anti-rug protection, and basically, depending on what mechanisms you have in place, there would be a stop where there would have to be some type of investigation, and then there would have to be before the liquidity could be, if there's a large amount of liquidity that's leaving the project suddenly, there would have to be like an approval by the chain. There'd be something like that. Now, projects don't have to do that, but if they do, it would give the holders a sense of confidence. And if a project isn't doing anything sketchy, then they would be able to potentially, contribute or participate and stuff like that. So, and that would really just come down to value that's stored in the treasury would not fall into that category, but value that's stored in, because they need the ability to send out funds and pay for stuff and pay themselves. But value that would fall into the category of rewards, that's something that shouldn't be touched. Value that falls, and it should only be able to go back towards the liquidity pool if it's a buyback wallet, and it should only be able to go towards the holders if it's rewards. It shouldn't be able to go anywhere else. That way you can protect the holders. It's very interesting, everything we're talking about, because really all we're saying is what's the best system for a community to come around and support a vision of a project. And I think a share of it is definitely the answer, but all the value going towards a liquidity pool is not the answer. It's not. You need delayed liquidity, you need tiered liquidity, you need dynamic tokenomics, you need taxless tokenomics, you need sell-less fees. Because all of this, but this gives us the ability to collect significant value, not for us, but for the holders, not just for the holders, but for the people who aren't destroying the project. This is selling, this is holding. And this can go towards buying as well. You can add value towards people that buy, which is another really powerful tool, because you're giving value to people that are actually growing the project, the visual representation of the project is a chart. So incentivizing buying is an extremely powerful tool. But if you do too much, you will start to get another problem, which is less liquidity. The price moves up less, and you have to constantly feel more of the supply through buys. It does create a problem. Everyone should buy a load of control compared to the rest, and you will see that the others will give you nothing. Yeah, this is an extremely exciting thing that we're trying to do. Everything that I'm saying to you guys, and there's not many people listening, that's fine. Whenever I talk about people shifting away from speculative, like that's the entire purpose of control, is like be about what we're trying to do. And if the value incentivizes you not to do that, then you're not going to. But if I can build a value that aligns you with my vision, which is the success of control, which is not for the sake of making money, it's for the sake of making better systems for everybody. That's what we're trying to accomplish, is something far bigger than just one person making money or a couple whales making some profits off of a project going. We're trying to help all of DeFi shift away from bad structures that are hurting most people and away from speculation and towards the purpose of the project. You need value that's attached to the purpose of the project. You need that, right? So that if a project succeeds and you helped it succeed, you should be rewarded. And that's man, I think I just thought of something. Anyways, guys, thanks for being here. I gotta go work this out. We got a $1 donation from Mitch Bromwell. Thank you so much, Mitch Bromwell. Thanks for being here, everybody. Hopefully this helps you guys understand the supply, the pyramid, the liquidity, selling, bad incentives, and the future delayed value that can go towards good incentives for holding. Also the speculative and how that grows the LP, and how having future value isn't speculation that grows the LP, but it's real value that grows the LP. And so by having a tokenomics that builds up real value, you will always have heavy incentive to continue to grow the LP as long as you have supply to fund it. So, all right, guys, I'm going to end this today, and I will be doing more content and stuff on what it is that we're doing. So anybody wants to check it out, let people